The Science of Pruning Training Video Part 1.
Skillful pruning is beneficial to landscapes. In addition to controlling the size of plants, pruning techniques can be used to enhance natural beauty or to create geometric or formal shapes. Pruning also encourages healthy and vigorous growing plants and is useful to improve the quality and/or the quantity of flowers, foliage, and fruits. In order to obtain these desirable results, it is necessary to understand why and how plants respond to pruning.
This presentation will, first, teach the basic science of pruning. Second, it will establish the standard of responsibility for each individual on the crew. In general, we do not form our plants into geometric shapes or hedges. Notice that while this juniper is balanced and falls within its proper bounds, it has a natural shape and is fairly pleasing to the eye.
To start, let's look at some principles of plant anatomy and growth. The top bud of a stem is known as the terminal or apical bud, and the lower buds are called axillary or lateral buds. The points where the buds originate are called nodes. The space between nodes is called the internode. Some plant hormones, known as auxins, are produced in the apical bud. These hormones focus plant energy into the apical bud, allowing it to grow vigorously, adding length to the stem. Auxins also flow down the stem and work to suppress the growth of lateral buds. The resulting growth pattern is termed apical dominance. If this apical bud is removed, the growth will now be encouraged in the uppermost lateral buds. Buds tend to grow in the direction they are pointing and will develop into new stems with their own apical buds. The resulting growth appears fuller and more bushy.
There are two very important general rules to keep in mind when pruning a bush. The first is that you should always make your cut at a crotch. The crotch is the angle that is formed between two different branches. The second rule involves taking frequent steps back to review the evolution of the plant as you prune it. A good 10 to 15 feet is usually sufficient. As you do this, take note at how the look of the plant changes as you take out branches. This will prevent many of the bad cuts that would otherwise occur.
Using the proper pruning tool is as important as making a correct pruning cut. When removing portions of plant stems, there are several points to keep in mind to aid in rapid healing. Use sharp tools to leave smooth cuts and never leave a stub. A stub is no longer a part of the living plant and will eventually die and decay. This leaves a patch of dead tissue where it was attached and can create an entrance for insects or disease. To avoid leaving a stub, a cut should always be made just above the lateral bud or to a lateral branch. Select a healthy bud or lateral branch pointing in a direction where growth is wanted. This usually is an outward-facing bud. The cut should be made at a 45-degree angle. The lower end of the cut begins on the opposite side of the bud and ends 1/4 inch above the bud. The slope created keeps water from pooling on the wound, discouraging disease development. Cuts made too high above the bud will result in stubs, and those made too close may cause it to dry out and die. When cutting to opposite buds, make a square cut across the stem as close as you can without nicking the buds. The inward bud may be rubbed off to keep growth focused in an outward direction.
Some common plants on campus on which we use these cuts are spirea, barberry, euonymus, and cotoneaster.
When removing tree limbs, the goal is to refrain from leaving a stub and to avoid cutting flush with the trunk. Both slow the healing process and give opportunities for diseases and insects to invade. To figure the best angle of removal, attention needs to be directed to the branch collar and to the branch bark ridge. The branch bark collar is a swollen area that almost encircles the base of the entire limb. The branch bark ridge is an area of slightly raised or wrinkled-looking bark extending partway around the sides of the trunk. It extrudes from a point just above the branch. The proper cut comes as close as possible to the outside of the collar without going through it. When the branch collar is not well defined, use the branch bark ridge to choose the approximate angle of the cut. Make an imaginary line from the top of the bark ridge straight down the trunk. Note the angle it makes compared to the angle of the bark ridge. Using this guideline as a marker, make the pruning cut angle out as much as the branch bark ridge angles in. Tree limbs that are too heavy to support with your arm should be removed in a three-step process. First, start with an upward cut out approximately 12 inches from the trunk and cut about 1/4 of the way through. Second, move out a few inches for a downward cut to remove the heaviest part of the branch. This upward cut prevents the bark from tearing off the trunk when the heavier part of the branch falls. The third and final cut is made close to the collar of the branch so as not to leave a stub. Be careful not to cut into the collar. Remove any rough pieces that remain to create a smooth surface. This helps promote rapid healing.
While we do not prune any trees on this crew, these principles do apply to certain shrubs that we handle. Among these are juniper, winged euonymus, laurel, and yew. Keep these principles in mind as we guide you through the process of pruning a bush. There are 4 general steps that we use to do this. The first involves clearing out all of the dead. The second step focuses on the structure of the different branches. In the third step, we work with the shape of the bush, and in the fourth step, we give it the finishing touches. The first thing we focus on in pruning a plant is cutting out the dead or deceased branches. Not every plant will have dead branches, and each plant is unique in what its dead branches look like. Oftentimes, however, the bark will be wrinkled, shedding, or discolored. The branch may also be absent of leaves, or the leaves will be dried up and browning. Cutting out the plant's dead branches not only improves the plant's aesthetic appeal, but opens it up for new growth to generate. It is important to cut out the dead branch all the way back to the crotch.
The third pruning technique is thinning or thinning out. This type of cut removes entire stems at their base or lateral branches at their points of origin. With a thinning cut, unlike a heading cut, there will be little or no response at the pruning site. Instead, the response is spread out through the entire plant. This pruning technique is used to preserve a plant's natural growth habit while achieving a more open framework of branches.
Structural cuts are important because they determine the plant's future growth habits. In order to improve the structure, cut out any crossing or crowding branches. Oftentimes, a particular branch is causing the problem, but sometimes taking out one branch is as good a decision as the other. Keep in mind, however, that you are striving for an even density and structure throughout the plant. By cutting back these unwanted branches, we help open up the plant, allow more light inside, and give it a healthier, bushier look. In addition, these cuts will train the shrub to develop a desired shape or to fill in an open area. Keep in mind, however, that in some cases, you cannot remove all that needs to come out without damaging the plant's appearance. This corrective pruning must be done in stages. Structural cuts can be some of the most difficult cuts to make. However, one effective method for making this easier is to visualize the result of your cut before you make it. This will help you become an independent worker more quickly. To do this, pull the branch in question away from its area and ask yourself, is the plant better with this branch? Will the plant be better without it? Is there a nearby branch that should be removed instead? If you are still in doubt after this, you may want to ask a more experienced pruner for advice.
Pruning to shorten a stem to just above a bud or lateral branch is called heading or heading back. A plant's response to a heading cut will vary depending on the severity of the cut and the vigor of the stem. The severity of a cut refers to the amount of material removed. Removing 2/3 versus 1/3 of a branch will produce a more vigorous response from the remaining buds. The age and vigor of a stem will also vary the response to pruning. A cut on 1-year-old wood generates a greater response than a cut into older wood. It is important to note here that the growth response to a heading cut will be localized to that branch and not throughout the entire plant. The buds nearest to the heading cut will grow most vigorously. Heading back is used to redirect growth, stimulate new flowers or budding wood on fruit trees, to thicken and strengthen the trunks of young trees, or to create lush and dense foliage.
During the stage in pruning, there are a few things that you need to keep in mind. Before you begin, make sure that all of the structural issues have been addressed. Often, these will take care of the shape as well. After you confirm this, note the desired size of the bush compared to similar plants nearby. Ask yourself, what size are the other plants around it? What should this plant's size be? Is this plant growing beyond the limits intended for it? Also, keep in mind that shooters still need to be pruned back to the crotch. Finishing up the plant is where it all comes together. In this important step, you clean up the plant and make it presentable. To do this, remove the leaves, trash, and other clutter from the base and branches of the plant. This will often expose stubs and stumps that need to be removed on the bush or on the ground. Remove these and step back to take a final examination of your work. Take out any remaining branches that don't belong. One of the most important aspects of employee responsibility on this crew regards tool care. In order to keep proper track of the tools, pay attention to the number of the pruner or lopper that you use. Replace this tool when you are done. Then, before main cleanup, help the driver take inventory of the tools. This advice, though simple, helps reduce the loss of supplies. Also, keep in mind that the bypass loppers have a tendency to break if put under too much strain. Use the anvil loppers or a saw to make particularly difficult cuts. Just remember, you are stronger than the loppers. Furthermore, you are to take personal responsibility for becoming a confident quality pruner. Make that a goal today. While you always want to take great care with your decisions, do not let a fear of making mistakes prevent you from doing what is needed on the plant. This is the most common struggle for new pruners. Don't let it get in the way. You may make mistakes, but learn from them. It is the general expectation that you will work hard and take pride in your work. Excellence is in your power. Strive always for it.
Pruning can be a mixture of the practical, keeping plants in their desired size and shape, while also lending itself to the whimsical and the artistic. Some of the world's most stunning gardens are created from a marriage of all the pruning possibilities. Keeping in mind the basic principles of pruning, you are well on your way to maintaining and creating beautiful and healthy plants to enhance our landscapes.